I was 22 when this happened. The summer before my senior year of college, I took a temporary job cataloging old survey records for a forestry company in northern Idaho. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid better than anything I could find back home in Spokane.
The company rented me a small cabin outside a town called Avery, tucked deep in the St. Joe National Forest. The nearest gas station was nearly 20 minutes away. Cell service came and went depending on where you stood. Most nights, the only sounds were wind moving through the pines and the occasional freight train rolling through the valley. At first, I loved it. The isolation felt peaceful. During the day, I'd drive to a storage facility where decades of maps, property surveys, and logging records were stored. I'd scan documents and organize them into a database. Boring work, but easy. The cabin itself sat at the end of a gravel road with only one neighboring property visible through the trees. That property belonged to an older man named Hank.
I met him on my second day. I was unloading groceries from my truck when I noticed him standing across the road. He wasn't doing anything exactly strange, just staring. He looked to be in his late 60s. Gray bear, flannel shirt despite the heat, thin frame. When he realized I had seen him, he raised one hand. I waved back. He didn't smile. He simply turned and walked back into the woods, towards his property. Something about the interaction felt odd. Still, I forgot about it. Small towns are full of eccentric people. 3 nights later, I woke up around midnight. At first, I wasn't sure what had disturbed me. Then, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow footsteps outside the cabin. Crunch. 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 The sound circled the building. I sat upright in bed. The footsteps stopped at my bedroom window. For several seconds, everything was silent. Then the footsteps resumed, moving away. I grabbed my phone. No signal. By the time I looked outside, nobody was there. The next morning, I found boot prints near the cabin. I assumed they belonged to Hank. Who else would be wandering around out here? The thought irritated me more than it scared me. A lonely old guy checking out the newcomer? That was my explanation.
A few days later, I ran into him at the gas station. He was standing near the coffee machines. When he saw me, his expression tightened, almost like he was nervous. "You staying at the Morrison cabin?" he asked. His voice was rough. "Yeah." He glanced toward the windows, then back at me. "Keep your doors locked." I laughed. "Because of bears?" His face didn't change. "Just lock them." Then he walked away. No explanation. Nothing. The entire conversation lasted maybe 15 seconds. After that, I started paying more attention to him. And the more I paid attention, the stranger he seemed. Sometimes I'd notice his truck parked near the road leading toward my cabin. Once I saw him standing in the trees about 50 yards from the property, just watching. When I waved, he disappeared into the woods.
The first real warning sign came about 2 weeks into my stay. I returned from work just before sunset. The cabin door was slightly open, only an inch, maybe less. I froze. I was positive I had locked it that morning. For several minutes, I stood there trying to convince myself I'd forgotten. Finally, I went inside. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing seemed disturbed. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there.
That night, I barely slept. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a vehicle. Its engine was moving slowly along the gravel road, not driving past, crawling. The headlights swept across my bedroom wall, then stopped. I looked through the blinds. An old pickup sat near the driveway. The lights remained on for maybe 30 seconds, then the truck drove away. I couldn't identify the driver, but I convinced myself it was Hank. Who else could it be?
The next day, I bought a cheap trail camera from a sporting goods store. I mounted it facing the driveway, partly for peace of mind, partly because I wanted proof.
3 nights later, the camera captured someone. The image was blurry, taken around 2:14 a.m. A figure stood near the tree line, watching the cabin. The person's face was impossible to make out, but the body shape looked thin, like Hank. I felt vindicated. Finally, evidence. I drove to town and showed the photo to a woman working at the grocery store. She recognized him immediately. "That's Hank." "See," I said, "he keeps showing up around my place." The woman frowned. "That's weird. Why? Hank mostly keeps to himself. Does he bother people?" She hesitated. "No, not really." Then she lowered her voice. "He lost his daughter years ago." "What happened?" "No one's completely sure." That answer only deepened my suspicion. I started imagining all kinds of possibilities. Maybe grief had affected him. Maybe he wasn't stable. Maybe he had become obsessed with me for some reason. The theories multiplied every time something happened, and things kept happening. The second major warning sign occurred during my 3rd week. I returned home to find muddy footprints on the back porch. Not boot prints, sneaker prints. Fresh. The tracks led to a window, then vanished into the woods. The sight made my stomach drop. Something about those prints felt different, younger, more deliberate. I almost called the sheriff, but I stopped myself. The evidence seemed too weak. A few footprints, nothing stolen, no broken windows, no crime. I told myself I was overreacting. That evening, Hank appeared unexpectedly. I was sitting outside when his truck pulled into the driveway. He stepped out holding a flashlight. I immediately felt defensive. "What do you want?" He looked surprised by my tone. "I need to ask you something." "What?" "Has anybody else come around here?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Anybody." I shrugged. "No." For several seconds, he studied me, almost like he was trying to decide whether to say something. Finally, he nodded. "If you hear anything at night, call the sheriff." Then he got back in his truck and left. I remember sitting there afterward, feeling angry. The conversation sounded less like concern and more like intimidation, as if he knew exactly what was happening around my cabin, as if he was testing what I'd seen. That interpretation seemed obvious at the time. I wish I had been right. The 3rd warning sign arrived 4 days later. I found photographs, 3 of them. They had been slipped beneath the cabin door. The pictures showed me unloading groceries, walking to my truck, and standing outside the storage facility where I worked. Someone had clearly been watching me, following me, photographing me. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the 3rd photo. Written on the back were 3 words: "Not safe alone." That was it. No signature, no explanation. I called the sheriff. A deputy came out that afternoon. I showed him everything: the trail camera image, the photographs, the footprints. The deputy listened patiently, then asked a question. "Anybody around here you suspect?" I immediately said Hank. The deputy sighed. "Everybody blames Hank." "What does that mean?" "He reports strange things all the time." "What kind of things?" The deputy shook his head. "Hard to explain. Not exactly reassuring." Before leaving, he advised me to stay alert and call if anything else happened. I remember feeling disappointed. Nobody seemed concerned enough. Nobody was treating the situation seriously. That night changed everything. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke to the sound of glass breaking. I jumped out of bed. The noise had come from somewhere near the kitchen. My heart hammered. For several seconds, I stood frozen. Then I grabbed a flashlight and moved carefully through the cabin. The kitchen window had been shattered. Cold air drifted through the opening. But nobody was inside. At least, nobody I could see. Then, my flashlight landed on something lying on the floor. A rock, wrapped in paper. I unfolded it. 2 words. Leave now. I didn't sleep after that.
At sunrise, I packed my truck. I planned to leave immediately. I didn't care about the job anymore. I just wanted out. Then, Hank arrived. For the first time, he looked genuinely frightened. "Get in your truck," he said. "What? Now?" Something in his voice stopped me. "What is going on?" He looked toward the woods, then back at me. "You're not the first." I felt a chill crawl through my body. "What are you talking about?" His answer changed everything I thought I knew. Years earlier, his daughter had rented the same cabin while working a seasonal job. She began noticing strange things. Missing items, people watching the property, photographs. The sheriff never found evidence. One night, she vanished. Her truck remained parked outside. She was never found. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. Why didn't anyone tell me this? They don't like talking about it. "You think somebody took her?" His jaw tightened. "I know somebody did." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he pointed toward the woods. "I've seen him." The words sent a wave of dread through me. Him? A man. My mouth felt dry. Who is he? I don't know. That answer wasn't what I expected. Everything I believed about Hank suddenly felt wrong. The warnings, the watching, the questions. He hadn't been stalking me. He'd been monitoring the cabin, trying to protect whoever stayed there, trying to catch whoever had taken his daughter. Before I could respond, something moved near the tree line. A figure, gone almost immediately. But both of us saw it. Hank's face turned pale. "Get in the truck." This time, I listened. We drove directly to the sheriff's office. On the way, Hank explained more. Over the years, several temporary workers staying in isolated rentals had reported similar incidents. Nothing serious enough to trigger major investigations. Nothing that connected cleanly. Yet the patterns repeated. Photos, watching, trespassing, threats. Then, silence. The sheriff took our statements. Search teams combed the woods. Nothing. No suspect, no evidence. I left Idaho the following morning. For months, I thought the story was over. Then came the final twist. About 6 months later, I received a phone call. It was the deputy, the same one who had visited the cabin. He sounded uneasy. "We found something." "What?" "There was a maintenance worker." I didn't understand. A maintenance worker? He handled repairs for several remote rental properties around the region. My stomach tightened. The deputy continued. The guy had access to cabins, keys, occupancy schedules. Suddenly, everything clicked.
He always knew who was staying where. He knew when people were alone. He knew when properties were vacant.
The deputy explained that investigators discovered hundreds of photographs inside a storage unit connected to the man. Visitors, seasonal workers, tourists, mostly people staying in remote locations, including me, including Hank's daughter. My blood ran cold. Did he confess? No. Then how do you know? A long pause followed. Because they didn't know.
The man had disappeared before police could question him. Vanished, just like Hank's daughter, just like several pieces of the investigation. There wasn't enough evidence to charge him, only enough evidence to terrify everyone involved. The deputy told me one final detail before ending the call. Among the photographs recovered from the storage unit were dozens that investigators couldn't identify. People from different states, different years, different locations. Some were clearly unaware they were being photographed. Others appeared to be looking directly at the camera, as if they had finally realized someone was there. The storage unit held records spanning nearly 15 years. 15 years. I still think about that. Especially one part. Investigators recovered photographs of me that I had never seen before. Pictures taken from outside my cabin, outside my workplace, outside a motel where I stayed after leaving Idaho. But there was one image they couldn't explain. It had been taken 2 weeks after I returned home to Spokane. The photo showed me standing outside my apartment building, looking directly toward the camera. Investigators confirmed it was genuine, not edited, not altered. The problem was that nobody could determine who took it, because by that point, the maintenance worker had already disappeared. And according to phone records, travel records, and surveillance footage, nobody could place him anywhere near Washington at the time. The case remains open. Hank still lives near Avery. His daughter was never found. The maintenance worker was never found either. Sometimes I wonder if those two mysteries are connected. Sometimes I wonder if they aren't. What bothers me most isn't what happened at the cabin. It's the possibility that the man investigators suspected wasn't working alone. Because someone took that final photograph, and whoever it was knew exactly where I lived.